Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is a man you've probably definitely heard of. We use the word hero too lightly in our society presently. If you get over anxiety, you're a hero. If you post a black square on Instagram, you're a hero. But the real meaning of the word hero is when you go above and beyond. When you stand up for smaller people, weaker people, vulnerable people, when you put your life and your livelihood on the line, when you do something for other people that you didn't have to do, that's a hero. And this episode's guest, to me, is a hero. People have said I'm a hero because I fought back when I got cancelled. I wasn't a hero. I was fighting for my life. I was drowning. Someone threw me an inflatable and I grabbed it. That's not the same. But this week's guest did all that. He took the establishment to court and he won. This week's amazing guest is Harry Miller. Thank you, Harry, for coming along.
I'm blushing.
I know you don't want to hear everything I just said then, but honestly, I mean every single word I've just said.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. I'm typically English in that I take compliment very poorly. I'm much happier had you opened up the show with a string of insults. That would have put me in my comfort zone. Call me, oh you fatty, or you Yorkshire git, something like that. I'd have been, oh yeah, I'm happy now. But hero, yeah, interesting. Well, of course, I'm a very unlikely hero. Heroism is not something that that I ever sought. In actual fact, I was gearing my life down from being a businessman on the port of Immingham, employing a lot of people, and we were very dependent on the coal trade. And as you know, coal has fallen off a cliff edge, and so it seemed to me to be a natural time to be getting out of that business and into a life of comfortable retirement, jumping on aeroplanes, going to America, going to see my daughter in Australia, and just living the life of the idle, not very rich. But then, before I had the chance to do that, as you know, I got a knock at the door at my place of work, and PC Gull turned up from Humberside Police, who came to check my thinking because apparently I'd been tweeting things that somebody somewhere took exception to. Now, what I'd been tweeting, you and I might find quite innocuous. I'd said things like, if Caitlyn Jenner has always been a woman, which at the time Caitlyn Jenner was claiming, who won the 1976 men's decathlon at the Olympics? And I said that Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses. And I famously retweeted somebody else's fairly cutting piece of feminist doggerel. They called it a limerick, but it wasn't a limerick. And this was the bit that got me to national and international attention, because it was portrayed that the police were coming down on me for reposting a limerick. Now,
let me just jump in there, because I want to clarify one point for people who are listening. When the police contacted you, they actually said to you, we're here to check your thinking. That's not you exaggerating. That's not you making this story sound a little bit more sinister than it is. They actually said that to you.
Yeah, word for word. I said, I'm an ex police officer myself, although it's a long time ago since I was a policeman. But I do take the reportage of words quite seriously. And I did that trick that we were always told in the police, to make a record of what was said immediately, straight away. And what was said to me was so astonishing that I had to make a record. I did. I made a record straight away. And that's what he said. I said, let me get this straight. You're saying to me that I said, have I committed a criminal offence? And he said, no. I said, so why are you here then? And he said, I'm here to check your thinking. And word for word, that's what he said. And I said, have you any idea what that makes you? And he had no idea. I said, well, I reminded him of George Orwell, and said, George Orwell, the 1984 was a dystopian novel. It wasn't a police how-to manual. The reference was entirely lost on him. He then told me that unless he intervened in my non-criminal tweets, that my tweeting would escalate from non-criminality to criminality. And when I asked him what criminality he had in mind, he told me the murder of Stephen Lawrence. So I thought that's quite a leap, going from retweeting somebody else's so-called limerick to the murder of Stephen Lawrence. That is quite something. And this is when I uncovered this method of recording called the non-crime hate incident recording. Now, it turned out there were around about 200,000 of these non-crime hate incidents recorded since 2014. No trial, no jury, no charge, no anything. They were recorded purely on the basis of somebody else's perception. If somebody perceived that you were being hateful against one of the 5 monitored strands, so if I can remember them all, that's race, ethnicity, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability. If somebody perceives anything that you say or do as being motivated by hostility towards one of those 5 monitored strands, then it was recordable as a non-crime hate incident. Now, what is particularly sinister about the non-crime hate incident is this. One, you know that you are on a police database of hate. That's uncomfortable for anybody who sees themselves as a conforming, compliant, non-criminal citizen. But even worse than that, the police argued that a non-crime hate incident should be disclosable on an enhanced DBS check. So if I was to apply for a job working with youth or in a university or
working for my charity
or your charity, then it was entirely down to the chief constable whether or not they would disclose this to the place that I applied for a job. Now, that has to be wrong. It has to be wrong. So I took the police all the way through the courts. I took homicide police through to the High Court because they were the ones that approached me. Their defence was that they were following the national guidance set out by the College of Policing. So I took the College of Policing to the High Court as well. Now, in the first instance, in I think it was
let
late
me just quickly jump in. Let me quickly jump in. This is why you're a hero to me. Is because you didn't have to do any of this. If you'd have got a non-crime hate incident on your record, at your stage in life now, looking at retirement, it wouldn't have mattered one fig, one way or the other. You then decided, I'm not having this for my country and for my fellow citizens, and I'm going to take on the establishment. That is something the vast majority of people would never do. Most people would never fight back. The small percentage who do fight back only fight back because it's in their interest. You're that tiny, tiny, tiny handful of people in the world who are fighting back because it doesn't even affect you. You're doing it because it affects your country and your fellow citizens. That's why I admire you.
Well, thank you. And it is true. I could have chosen to ignore it. In fact, in one of the very early TV interviews that I did, I was asked, he said, most people would simply take it on the chin, Harry, why not you? And I said, well, one, I'm not most people. And two, why should any of us take on the chin a punch from the police when we've done nothing wrong? Why? It makes no sense to me. Now, I'm from that grand tradition of people who believe in fighting for the underdog and for doing the right thing, almost irrespective of cost. If you think back to the Second World War, Nick, Germany weren't interested in us. Hitler was he quite liked the royal family. He quite liked England. We weren't quite Aryans, but we weren't far off.
He wanted the German version of the British Empire.
Yeah, exactly. He admired us. We could have stayed right out of it. And we didn't enter the Second World War because our life was threatened. We entered the Second World War because it was the right thing to do. And the quality of life was threatened. Now, when all those brave young men and women chose to sign up and go and fight, they did so not with the risk of losing their reputation or their house, as I was. They run the very real risk of losing their life, a leg, an eye, whatever. So for me to have done nothing in my mind, would have been to have let down all those true heroes of previous wars, the Second World War in particular, who went on principle in order to maintain our British common law values of freedom. So that's it. So yes, it is. You know, it was brave. I did have the option of doing absolutely nothing, and it wouldn't have affected my life one bit, other than the fact that I like to go to bed at night thinking that I've done the right thing.
You're going to bed at night feeling like a coward.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that, Nick. I just couldn't do that. The pain of I always try and measure the pain of carrying on with the pain of giving up. And the pain of giving up would have been a lot less acute, but it would be crippling me now. It would be crippling me now, and it would cripple me to my grave. Whereas I pushed on through some very dark times, actually, because the thought of giving up was just wasn't an option. Not really. Not if I wanted to preserve my sense of sanity and dignity, and see myself. If I wanted to see myself as in the grand tradition of Englishmen, then I had to do the right thing. It's as simple as that.
Let's jump back to your court case. So how did that end, and what was the outcome of that? Because it was amazing. I remember seeing it on the news.
Yeah, so I took the Chief Constable and the College of Police into court because the Chief Constable of Humberside said that he was following the College of Policing guidance. So he said, fair enough, we'll take the College of Police into court as well. Now, what was strange in the High Court ruling, Humberside, Chief Constable of Humberside lost, and didn't just lose, he lost astonishingly. The High Court compared the actions of Humberside Police to those of the Stasi, the Cheka, and the Gestapo, which is not great. It's not a great look at all, quite frankly. But bizarrely, they said that the guidance itself remained legal. So we have this bizarre situation where the guidance was legal, but following the guidance was illegal. And I just thought, again, that's not right. That can't be. This is entirely illogical. This leaves the guidance in place, which leaves people exposed to further interference by other chief constables, and I'm not having it. So I appealed. We went to the Court of Appeal, and eventually I won. So the College of Police hate crime guidance was struck down. Now, that sounds like it should be a cause for celebration, and indeed it was for about 2 minutes. Because actually for several months, because the College of Policing were instructed to rewrite their guidance. They put out their new guidance, I think, end of July, beginning of August, and all they'd done, quite frankly, was rearrange the wording. So instead of having a non-crime hate incident or an NCHI, we now have an offence incident non-crime or an OINC. What they've done is they've taken the pot that marked jam and put strawberry preserve on it and hope that we don't tell the difference. They've done enough to keep themselves from being dragged back into court for contempt. The guidance has been written clearly by lawyers. The tacit message right the way through the new guidance is police officers, carry on as you were. Carry on as you were. The difference now is that when a chief constable gets taken to court for abuse, they'll no longer have the College of Policing standing beside them, because the College of Policing are fundamentally cowards, fundamentally useless, and they have written enough into the guidance to say, yeah, but paragraph 33, subsection 2 says the police didn't need to do this, and that's their get out. But the overarching method, the overarching message to the police is crack on as you were. Keep on finding hate everywhere. As I've said it before, the College of Police guidance encourages police officers to see hate in a slice of toast. They depend on finding hate everywhere, and quite astonishingly, Nick, in this attempt to get rid of hate, the college guidance states that a decrease in hate crime should not be regarded as an appropriate target. Say that again. What? So your task is to get rid of hate, but decreasing hate is not an appropriate target. In what world is that the case?
That's that comes straight out of critical race theory and those critical theories that this is endemic in society. It's institutional. So just because and they also know what you can do with figures. So just because you're showing a decrease in hate crime, we know there's no decrease because we know how you fiddle the figures anyway. So don't be telling us you decrease in hate crime because we know it's everywhere. And it's
absolutely everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And of course, it's funding an entire industry. The College of Policing is a private limited company. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that anybody's getting rich out of it, because they're not. But nevertheless, it's gobbling up around about £71 million worth of taxpayers' money. It employs around about 600 people. And if you look at their wage bill, that equates to round about £55,000 per person. Now you can get 2 police officers for £50,000. So just think what that money could do. And what the College of Policing has set out to achieve since its establishment, I think in 2011, 2012, is to professionalise the police. Well, it's done no such thing. What it's done, it's standardised policing, and it's turned policing into an algorithm, so that if you raise an eyebrow or say the wrong form of words, then there's an offence or a non-offence where they're waiting to trap you. And it's a way of generating a chilling effect. It's a form of, it's there to socially engineer without the trouble of bothering the courts. In the old system, of course, you were innocent until proven guilty. There had to be enough evidence to go and investigate, another level of evidence to arrest, another level of evidence to convince the custody sergeant to keep you in the nick, another level of evidence to charge you, and another level of evidence for the CPS to accept the case, and then another level of evidence beyond reasonable doubt for a jury to convict. Now, they've bypassed all of that process by having non-crime hate incidents, because there's no
processes are there to protect the citizen. That's what all those processes originally before. That's why you needed all that evidence to take it to the next step. Is to protect us and protect our rights from corrupt police officers, from corrupt government, and from incompetence. And now they just want to fast track because they know best and they know it's a thought crime. 2 quick points to follow up on some of the things you've said. The first thing is, we must remember, just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right. Almost everything Hitler did in Nazi Germany was legal because he was in control of the courts and in control of the law. And my second point is, and it's more of a question to you, can the Home Secretary end all this if they wanted to?
Whew. 2 big questions there, Nick. Right. First of all, I would say that there is definitely a difference between what's morally correct and what's legal. You don't have to look as far as Hitler. You can look at any totalitarian regime where the law says one thing, but the right thing to do is something entirely another. Now, bad as our country may be, we still live under a parliamentary democracy, and we have the opportunity to get rid of our politicians every few years. We have the opportunity to go to court and to appeal any accusation, etc., etc. So, whilst our country is not perfect, it's a long, long way from being Adolf Hitler's the Third Reich. So there is that, I would say. Now, what the police are doing, they're saying, well, it may be technically legal to say something, but it's not nice to say something, and therefore you shouldn't say it. And if you do say it, we'll not record you as a criminal, but we'll record you as something else. Regardless, you're going to be recorded. And that's the thing. So we've moved from being guilty of a crime, in theory, still involves what they call actus reus, mens rea plus actus reus minus a defence. In other words, the guilty mind plus the guilty action minus a defence for doing so. Now they've bypassed that, and with this whole non-crime hate incident or offence incident, non-crime or perception-based recording, what they're doing is they're saying, we're not really interested in criminality anymore. We've now got a marker that marks your character. And we're marking your character as someone who is not kind, who is not nice, who is antagonistic, who clearly doesn't like a certain ideology that we approve of. And therefore, we're going to mark your character as being fundamentally unsound. And whilst that may not give you a criminal record, it will restrict your ability to get certain jobs. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's operating a paralegal system.
It's also pre-crime. It's a bit like Minority Report. Because of the things you say and the legal acts you do that we don't like, we're predetermining that you're bound to end up as a criminal and doing something really, really horrendous and nasty. So we're intervening earlier, pre-crime. And that's part of what I read, that some of the training now in the police is about, we stop it here so it doesn't escalate to assault, and it doesn't escalate to murder, and it doesn't escalate to genocide. So it's a
they base all this on a thing called the Allport scale. And what I committed was stage 1, which is anti-locution. And the argument is, or hate speech. The argument is that without what they call necessary intervention, you are on an escalator that goes through avoidance of minorities, and then active discrimination against minorities, and then attack of minorities, and then genocide of minorities. And they're saying that me retweeting a feminist limerick put me on stage 1 of a 5-step journey to genocide. Well, that's clearly nonsense. One, just anybody with any sense will recognize that there's not a straight line inevitability where one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing without intervention, because that takes away all agency. Secondly, they've not carried out any research at all to see if this is true. Absolutely none. We asked the College of Policing what research they'd done, what empirical research they'd done, and they came back and said they hadn't done any. But more than that, I think all we're trying to do is stop escalation to crime is actually a lie. I think the non-crime hate incident is an end in itself. It's not to prevent something, it's in order to mark you as of unsound character, that you are politically and ideologically problematic. There is, in my case, Mr. Justice Knowles said I wasn't even in the foothills of criminality, and there was no possibility that I was going to escalate into crime. Nevertheless, the police argued that I should be recorded. Well, if it's nothing to do with crime, then what is it to do with about? And it's to do with marking my character. Now, the second question was, can Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, do anything about this? And the short answer is yes. One of the interesting factors about the College of Policing is that it has one shareholder, and that shareholder is the Home Secretary. Okay, that's it. So when the Home Secretary changes, the shareholder changes. So yeah, what the Home Secretary should do is close the thing down as being absolutely unfit for purpose, and then she should move on from that and start telling PC, start dragging chief constables into her office and reading them the riot act and reminding them that we police by consent, and that while she will not interfere with policing in terms of operational decision making, she will interfere when it comes to the police force operating a para-legal system, because she has every authority to do that. She just needs to have the willpower to do that, and she needs to work out how to get round the blob of the civil service in order to enact what she knows to be the right thing. Now, because I'm an optimist, I have a fair amount of hope that in Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak and Kemi Badenoch, we do have some politicians who are bright, who are serious, and who understand the seriousness of this issue and have some degree of willpower to challenge it. Of course, when you do raise your head above the parapet, as well as finding out, you end up with an absolute barrage of hostility heading in your direction. But if you seek high office, then it's on you to do it. You've got to do the right thing.
So because of all this, you set up a project called We Are Fair Cop. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. When my sort of story hit the headlines, there were a number of very good people in the Twitter sphere, including some former police officers who immediately recognised that this was something quite terrible and disturbing. And we gathered round and had a meeting and said, well, let's form a resistance. Now, initially, the plan was to go and protest. I think it was the Police Federation or something like that. But then we thought, well, we can go down there and we can have a bit of a good time and we can make a bit of noise, but what's it actually going to do? And probably not a lot. So we decided to be a little bit more strategic. We call ourselves Fair Cop because fundamentally we believe that police officers are fair. That it's just a few politically bad apples who are spoiling it for everybody else. And we decided to go down the legal route. I mean, I was already committed to the legal route, but this gave me a bunch of people who were around me who could be, quite supportive. Now, one of the things that I think is important when you're involved in activism is, I call it the 3 C's. You need conviction. That's absolutely true. You also need courage. That's absolutely true. But the 3rd C is community. You need a community of people who you can rely on, who trust you, who will tell you when you're going wrong, who will encourage you when you're down. You need that sense of community, and that's what Fair Cop became. And then, of course, it took on something of a life of its own, because as I became more well known in the public sphere, and it turned out that I was able to articulate the problem reasonably well. That's when I started getting on, the radio and the telly and all those bits and pieces. Of course, this was all run on an absolute shoestring. We've never had a bank account. We're not a thing. We're not an organisation. We're a Fair Cop. Fair Cop's a Twitter handle and a web page. That's it. And then a bunch of very, very keen volunteers, including the outstanding barrister Sarah Phillimore, who's an absolute vicious sod. She's fantastic. I would not want to fight against her. I'm so pleased she's on our side. We also have a number of anonymous police officers, and it's not a membership as such. We don't have a membership, but we have a number of police officers who are loosely associated, in so much as they'll ring me up and say, Harry, this is doing the rounds in the police, or have you considered this piece of guidance that's come out? And then what I will typically do is I will put in an FOI request to the force and say, I understand this document is doing the rounds, please send me a copy. So I'm not compromising any police officers at all. I would go to prison before I revealed their names. Not that they've done anything wrong, by the way, at all, because we are not a political organisation. We are not campaigning for any changes to the law, bar one little one. I'll have more on that in a moment.
And that's why you can't be a membership organisation, because if you was a membership organisation, you'd have records, and all it would take is them to come into your property with a court paper and confiscate all your records, and they would know all these officers.
Well, we don't. I said it's not. It doesn't exist other than as a hashtag and as me and anybody else. Anybody who says, "Oh yeah, I'm Fair Cop," well, you're Fair Cop. It's sort of the Al Qaeda model. If you say you're Al Qaeda, you're Al Qaeda. But if you say you're Fair Cop, you're Fair Cop. It's as simple as that. The only thing that we are campaigning to change is the wording of the 2003 Police Act, which requires it changed the oath of attestation. Prior to 2000, I think it was 2002, 2003, police officers were required to uphold the law and keep the peace. Since that point, they've been required to uphold the law, keep the peace, and uphold human rights. Now, we think that is highly problematic because what human rights are they talking about that aren't already covered by upholding the law? And what our argument is that you are then forced to make a political decision about which human rights are worth upholding and which ones aren't. For instance, people from Montana would argue that the Second Amendment, the right to carry arms, is a human right. Well, we don't expect the police to uphold that human right, but when Amnesty International say trans rights are human rights, and the police make a decision to adopt that, well, why? Simply do this: uphold the law. And if you want to campaign for a change in the law, don't be a police officer. It's simple.
Yeah, I remember a discussion with a police inspector when I was doing some work around Manchester Pride, and we knew I'd already reported this individual as a paedophile, and I'd had him arrested, and he was prosecuted for a minor offence. They couldn't prove higher offences, and we'd seen him again hanging around Manchester Pride, which attracts lots of young people. Lots of kids come to the weekend and hang around. And the police inspector said to me, because I said, I'll inform my staff, and if we see him, we can phone you. And he said to me, no, don't tell your staff and don't phone us, because if you do, that could be against his human rights, because he hasn't done anything. And if you start phoning us saying and telling us where he is, and then we turn up, it could come out in court that we got a phone call. And I'm like, this guy's a convicted paedophile. And they were more worried about his human rights and getting in trouble than they were keeping an eye on him when there's loads of kids in the city centre for Manchester Pride.
Yeah, well, I said it's strange. Posey Parker got a visit from the police just a few months ago.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah, because she'd said some disparaging things about paedophiles, and the police turned up and told her it wasn't on doing that. Well, that's quite strange, really. I mean, that's just bonkers. That was the week before I got arrested. Weirdly.
Right. Yeah. So let's get into that then. That's a great segue. So you've got a new project now called the Bad Law Project, and that's what you got arrested for a few months ago. Tell me about that. How did that start?
Okay, so Lawrence Fox, who was famously cancelled for not agreeing that all white people are racist, his very lucrative career was cancelled, and he ran for mayor of London. And it was during that period that he and I got to know each other, because he was consulting with me about policing and policing policy, etc.
And at the same time, I was running for mayor of Greater Manchester. I mean, you had a conversation about policing as well.
That's right. Yeah, I remember it. I remember that now. I had forgotten about that. Yeah, you're right. So we got to know each other then, and then following my win at the Court of Appeal, where we fundamentally changed policing forever, I said to Lawrence, I know you set up a political party, but if you win one seat, what really have you won? What influence have you got, really? I said, well, there's another way of doing this, and that's through what I've done, which is by taking one of the foundational institutions, the police, through the courts and winning and making them change their behaviour. I've done the job of the Home Secretary. Now, that's a bigger job than doing the job of an MP. So why don't we just replicate the model and take the large institutions, the foundational institutions, through the courts when they're getting it fundamentally wrong? And he said, well, that's a really good idea. So we set up the Bad Law Project. Now, the name, obviously, it's partially trolling Jolyon Maugh's Good Law Project, which is the wokest, leftist, so-called law movement on the planet. So that was one reason, obviously, just to troll him. But the more important and the more enduring and the more grown-up reason is because we think that there are an awful lot of very good laws that have been turned bad through bad guidance and bad practice. And so the Bad Law Project is seeking to reverse that trend. Now that takes us into what happened in, where was it? Was it Hampshire? Yeah, Hampshire, Aldershot. This summer, where a war veteran, a Royal Green Jacket with 30 years service and a chest full of medals, was approached by the police for simply posting on social media the trans flag configured so that.
Well, he didn't post it. He just shared it.
Yeah, he just shared it. Well, even worse than that, he put it on a debating forum on Facebook and said, "What do people think of this?" He didn't even make a qualitative comment of his thoughts about it. But again, somebody perceived this as being racist and homophobic, and homophobic. Yeah. So they got hold of the police. The police turned up and they said, "Look, this is definitely a non-crime hate incident, but we can turn this into a crime, or you can pay us 60 quid and we'll send you on a course to get your thinking checked, and it will just remain as a non-crime hate incident." And he argued the toss with them, and they agreed to come back 10 days later. In the meantime, he got hold of us, so we turned up there with our film crew, and
I've seen it.
Yeah. And
it was great.
We did a thing. Yeah, we policed the police, and again that was highly effective, because within 24 hours he got arrested. I got arrested. He got released within about an hour or two. I got released sometime after midnight. All charges against him were dropped the following morning. I'm still released under investigation, in effect on bail. But we were successful, because the following morning the PCC of Hampshire came out and said this 60 quid sending people on a course thing has got to go. It's got to stop immediately. And the chief constable, who was supposed to be taking up a job with the College of Policing, simply announced she was retiring. So it was a result. Now, to be fair, I said, when I was contacted by the press, they said, "What do you want? Do you want an apology?" I said, "No, I want the chief constable's head in my fridge." By the way, I don't mean that literally; it's a metaphor. That's in fact what we got. We changed police policy at a local level, and we ended the career of that chief constable. So,
and this is the way forward.
When you're brave, when you're smart, and when you take direct action.
And this is what's needed, because the only way we're going to change some of these big organizations is when it affects the top of it personally, when it affects their job, their pension, their salary. We saw this 10 years ago with the Rotherham inquiry, the first one, where the head of children's services in the council was sacked. Every head of children's services across the country all went, "Oh, we need to start doing something about the raping of these girls, because it now affects me." And it's only when you go after the top layer that something ever gets done. So making her resign and going after chief constables and embarrassing them on national TV.
International TV. We got on Tucker Castle. We got everywhere in Australia, the States.
That's the way to do it. Waving placards outside the Home Office will do nothing. Writing letters will do nothing. The way you've set up Bad Law Project is the way to go, because you're just showing the failings in the system. You're showing the incompetence, the corruption, the ideology. And some of this sounds like it's come straight out of Maoist China or the Soviet Union.
Well, I'll tell you precisely where it's come out of, Nick. It's come out of Europe, because we haven't had a police Brexit. We haven't had one. We have the National LGBT Police Network, who are part of the Police Network Europe, who take their agenda directly from Rainbow Europe, which is set up by Ursula von der Leyen. Which is why only last week we had the police tweeting about a thing called recording bias indicators. What the hell is a bias indicator, Nick? It sounds pretty sinister to me. In the same week, we had the National LGBT Police Network lecturing us about how to speak about chromosomes. Now, can you imagine a world where the police think it's their job to lecture us about chromosomes and how to speak about chromosomes? This is where it's going, and we know where it's coming from. It's coming directly from Europe. Directly. We need a police Brexit, and we need it now.
And what people need to understand, the difference between UK policing and law and the continent, is we've got English common law. And English common law basically states you're free to do anything you want to do unless it breaks the law. On the continent, all their legal systems are set up as in you can do nothing unless the government and the law tells you can do it. The complete opposites.
Correct. Correct. And the police don't seem to understand this. They don't understand this. That unless I'm breaking the law, it's none of your damn business what I'm doing. So piss off. And that's what I'll say to them, Nick. And I'll say to them, say that screw be kind. I'm not going to be kind when it comes to this, because this is seeking to impose a system of permissions on us in the name of kindness and in the name of human rights. Well, screw all that. I ain't playing.
Let me pose this question to you. Are the British police getting involved in all this because there's hardly any crime left to solve and they're worried about losing their jobs because there is no more rape, no more murder, and they're thinking we need to attract other things to do because we could all lose our jobs next year because crime's almost zero? Could that be the reason?
Well, it could be the reason, but it's not the reason. It's not the reason. It's not the reason. There's a recent Civitas report come out written by Hardeep Singh and another chap whose name I can't remember. They're saying that only around about 6% of burglaries are actually properly being investigated. 6%. That's huge. What the police have done, their focus on ideological and political and so-called human rights offences has come at the expense of traditional offences. Now, here's the thing. Even if there were no crimes to solve, it would still not be appropriate for the police to be policing our speech and telling us about chromosomes and recording bias indicators. Even if all the crime was solved, that is not a legitimate police practice. It's wrong.
And the police, I mean, I used to work with the council. I used to work with the police. I was a council manager based in police stations for many, many years. I used to help draw up patrol plans and where police officers should go and who they should speak to. So I understand how the police work. And even then, it's got worse since then, last 20 years. But even then, I could see what was happening, as in police officers turning up with rainbow lanyards and LGBTQ badges. And then there'd be another month of some support and they'd have badges of that. And I'm looking at these things thinking, these may be good causes, but you shouldn't be advertising any causes. And I'm at a stage now where I don't even think police officers should wear the red poppies because...
Well, funny enough, you should say that, Nick. Funny enough, because I've been grappling this for quite some time, and I've gone from, yeah, they should wear them, to no, they shouldn't wear them. And I'm back at, yes, they should wear them. I'll tell you why. I think we have when a police officer takes office, they swear an oath of allegiance to the sovereign, because it's the sovereign from which their powers derive. You do it, and you do it all in the name of the sovereign. Everything. Now, does the king wear a poppy? Yes. Did the queen wear a poppy? Yes. In that case, there's no problem whatsoever with the police wearing a poppy. Does the king wear an LGBT lanyard? No. Did the queen ever? No. In that case, I don't want to see one on you. That's the rule. It's what would the sovereign do? That's it. That's it.
I agree with that. The reason why I've come to the conclusion for them not to wear poppies is because if that is what we have to do to get rid of all the other rubbish that they're wearing, I would have that, because.
And I'm with you. I agree with you.
If we keep the poppy, they've always got that excuse. Why is that okay, but these things aren't okay? And to stop it at source, I would go none of it.
Yeah, I have sympathy with that with that view, and it's the view that I held, I think, until about 6 weeks ago. In fact, since the death of the Queen, actually, where I sort of started thinking about it, and I don't think that if I say to you the poppy, I can't think of a single political cause that the poppy represents. I just see it as representing, yeah. Where if I think of the rainbow, it's attached to numerous political causes, and I think that's the line in the sand. But I agree with you. If the price we have to pay is to get rid of the poppy, then in order to save our police force from being political, then it's a sacrifice I will be prepared to make.
Yeah, me too. I think that the poppy has become political because in our country presently, we have so many people who hate the country and they see the poppy as a celebration of the country and a celebration of other heroes who went before them, who saved the country. But because they hate everything British, they see the poppy representing that. And that's why the poppy has turned slightly political, but political for the people who hate the UK and hate Britain.
Well, again, they might say the same about the flag, and I think it's entirely appropriate that the police march beneath the Union flag, for instance. I think it's entirely. I think they might hate the Queen, but I think it's entirely appropriate, or the King, but I think it's entirely appropriate that the police swear allegiance to the monarch. So I have a lot of sympathy with your view. I think my view is hardening to wear it and be damned, but
we need to be careful of not giving too much ground away, because where does that take us? So I take on board everything you've said there. We can't just keep on giving ground to make things slightly easier, because if a fight's going to, I don't mean this is a physical fight, but if this fight's going to come, then let's have it, and let's have it on our terms, not 2 years from now where we've conceded so much ground, we've just made it harder for ourselves. Now, before you go, let's end with the Bad Law Project. What's happening there? Is there any, apart from the famous case on TV, have you had any other successful wins? What's going on? What are you aiming for? What's in the pipeline?
We've got a lot. We've been causing a fair amount of trouble for the Bishop of London on behalf of Calvin Robinson, who was who's a famously black ordinand who was not allowed to become a Church of England priest because apparently he didn't understand racism, which is crazy. You know, he took the heretical view that all white people aren't racists, and the Church of England was not fundamentally racist, and so they couldn't allow having a black man in church who held such heretical views. So we've been causing a lot of trouble for him. We've been on a similar subject. We've been fighting for Amy Gallagher, who was trained to be a clinical psychologist, I think it was, at the Tavistock Centre, and she refused to sign up to critical race theory, and so she was deemed to be far too dangerous to have anywhere near the Tavistock. The staff were too afraid of her. The students were too afraid of her. And how could they possibly have her as in the profession if she doesn't understand that all black people's problems stem from white people? So we're fighting on behalf of her. We're fighting the Chief Constable of Leicestershire at the moment because he continues to raise the flag, and not only that, go out onto the streets with police riot shields, saying "policing with pride." We say that's not on, and we're also about to launch a campaign, a schools campaign to try and drive out. Well, it's two-pronged actually. One is to drive out the some of the teaching that goes on in school around what they call PSHE, but more than that, it's around this fact that parents can't find out what's being taught to their children because of copyright concerns. Like, what? Hold on a minute. What? You're hiding behind copyright? No. As a parent, we have every right. Parents have a right to know what their children are being taught. So screw that. And that leads into the whole drag queen story time and blah 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 blah. So we're doing all of that and more. We have an outstanding barrister on staff now. We have a trainee solicitor who will be on full-time staff next year. we have access to some of the brightest and best political minds in the country. So yeah, it's going quite well, Nick.
That sounds fantastic. And let me just jump back to the school bit again. I'm a safeguarding expert, been doing it for 20 years. If you're trying to sexually groom a child, the first thing you need to do is you get that child to start keeping secrets, and you start keeping things away from the parents. There's the people who are responsible for our children. They're called parents. The parents should make all decisions, should know everything about their child, should know what's being taught, what isn't being taught, their behaviour, everything. Once you start keeping information away from parents, I'm telling you now, it's a slippery slope. It's extremely dangerous.
It's very dangerous. So what we're doing, we've adopted a Maoist policy of, screw the old people, capture the young, and then eventually the young will turn on their old, and we'll have a brave new world. That's what's happening, but it's not happening. It's not going to happen without a fair amount of resistance from not only us, but there are some other very, very good groups, Safe Schools Alliance, Transgender Trend. There are quite a few, and of course the fantastic work that Maya Forstater has done on behalf of women, and allowing us to speak out and express our belief without being immediately censored. So there's a lot going on, Nick, and we just see ourselves as one part of it. Of course, there's Toby Young with the Free Speech Union, and it requires all of these sort of small groups, each specialising in something, and we don't actually need all to work together. I mean, one, we don't all like each other. That's just a fact. Leaders don't tend to like, Montgomery and Eisenhower, and whichever battlefront you can find. There's real stiff competition. That's just human nature. I'll be honest. When I see Posey Barker doing something that involves the police, I eat my heart out because I want that to be me. We're all the same. We're all the same. So this notion that we'll all somehow get together, we won't, because we've all got egos, we've all got specialisms, we've all got our tribe, and that's absolutely fine. But we can clap and applaud what each other's doing, and then at things like the Battle of Ideas, you kiss and make up. You've had your fallouts over the year, you kiss and make up, and that's the way it goes.
And that's how it should be. I don't think all these little groups should get together, because once you become one group, there's only one target then. It's that group. Where there's a couple of dozen independent groups, they're a lot harder to take down a couple of dozen. And like I say, you're all specialised, you're all doing different things. Work together when you can, help each other, support each other when you can, but concentrate on doing what you were set up to do. And once you all join together, the board meetings, your weekly catch-ups, next thing you know, there's no time to do it. You turn into the council where nothing gets done because you're too big. So no, definitely stick.
All of us have got that sort of entrepreneurial sort of spirit. All are a little bit maverick. All of us gather around us, those 2 or 3 people who we absolutely trust, and who are going to add value to what it is we're doing. But the idea that we're all going to somehow adopt one grand cause and work, it will never ever happen. Will never happen. It's good enough if we can get together now and again and have a beer and not kill each other. That'll do me.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Javi, for sparing the time to talk to me today. Where can people find you? How can people help you? And I can put all this in the description as well to help people. But where can people find you and help you?
So if you go to Twitter, the Bad Law Team, they can find us on there. They can find us at badlawproject.com, is it? Or .co.uk?
I'll put it in the description. I'll do that.
I can't remember. They can find us at We Are Fair Cop. They can find me at Harry the Owl 101. So yeah, we're findable.
Yeah, excellent. I won't be able to find you on Twitter because I got kicked off last month. So I'm waiting for Elon to bring me back. Yeah.
You got what did he say?
I criticised the Ukrainian woman who came over here, moved in with a family, that ran away with the husband. And
then he booted her out. Yeah.
Yeah, I criticised her straight to permanent ban. Never had a warning before, never had a ban before, straight to permanent ban.
I wonder why.
I'm presuming they were after me for a while because I've been generating lots of complaints, but none of them were founded. But eventually, anyway, I'm hoping Elon brings me back. So
But long live Elon.
yeah, well, yeah, I keep.
Are you going to pay? Are you going to pay for your blue tick, Nick?
I didn't even have one.
I thought you did have a blue tick.
No, I never had one. Yeah, I applied once, and they said I'd had too many unofficial complaints registered against me. So even if those complaints weren't founded, and what always came back with they did nothing wrong, a bit like non-crime incidents, the fact they were registered against my name on a Twitter database meant Twitter said, "We're not giving you a blue tick. You have to be free of them for a year." And then
You're
I
a
got
wrong
banned. Exactly. I'm a wrong. So
You're a wrong
yeah,
yeah.
I'll let you know if I ever get back on Twitter. I'll tweet you if I ever get back. Thanks
All right.
again, Harry. It was great
No,
chatting
really
to you.
enjoyed it.
And
really
I'm
enjoyed it.
sure we'll bump into each other again soon, have a pint.
We will. Cheers, bud.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
mate.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.